Hey guys, so today we're going to be taking a look at Rocky Linux. So this is Rocky Linux 10. So this is basically it's basically a RHEL clone, and it was created because basically Red Hat Enterprise Linux has to make their source code available for free because they are basing their whole OS on the Linux kernel, which is a free open source project, and part of the licensing for that, the Linux kernel and the GNU utilities, says that any project based on it has to make their source code free. So to be fair, Red Hat has to make their source free so anyone can clone them. There is an OS called CentOS, which basically cloned Red Hat Enterprise Linux, but then Red Hat basically took over CentOS and transitioned it to be CentOS Stream, which is a little bit different and not a full real clone. So we needed a replacement for that. So some people came along and created Rocky Linux along with Alma Linux. So I actually just did a review of Alma Linux, which is almost identical to Rocky Linux, which both are almost identical to Red Hat Enterprise Linux. So this is Rocky Linux 10.0, and it matches up with Red Hat Enterprise Linux 10.0. So this is meant to be a binary compatible replacement of Red Hat Enterprise Linux. So the difference between this and Alma Linux, so Rocky Linux and Alma Linux are the two main Red Hat clones these days. Alma Linux is corporate backed and created by a larger company, whereas Rocky Linux is more like the community driven version. They're both community driven, but Rocky Linux is more community driven, and it's created by one of the guys who originally created CentOS. So maybe a little bit more authenticity there, but they're basically copying. It's basically a RHEL clone, which is totally fair because RHEL is basically basing their whole OS on a free open source operating system, kernel, and utilities in the first place anyways. So the whole point of this, the whole point of Rocky Linux is to clone Red Hat Enterprise Linux, and you would use it in the same instances where you would use Red Hat Enterprise Linux. Now, I'm going to talk a little bit more about what it is, and then we're going to actually demo some stuff and show you some things. So anyways, the use cases for Red Hat Enterprise Linux, you're going to use it on servers and in workstations where things have to be very, very stable and they're not going to be changing. You're going to have support for 10 years, so you can install it and have the same system running for 10 years. You don't have to disrupt things, reinstall, or anything like that. So you're basically going to be having stable package versions with just bug fixes and security fixes for basically 10 years. Very, very stable. Red Hat Enterprise Linux is extremely stable, and that's basically it's not going to be the most cutting edge, up to date thing, so not the best for gaming and stuff like that, but still pretty good. So that's basically what Red Hat would be used for, or Red Hat Enterprise Linux would be used for, and that is basically what you would use Rocky Linux. If you want a Red Hat clone that's basically compatible with Red Hat, but you don't have to pay the license fees and deal with licensing and connecting to their licensing servers and all that sort of stuff, this would be the OS for you, either Rocky Linux or Alma Linux. So you see here we have a GNOME desktop. It's a pretty standard generic GNOME desktop, not a whole lot of stuff installed. What I have installed here is I installed the server. When you do the installation of the installation was pretty easy. They give you a lot of options, a lot of things you can choose, a lot of things you can stick with the defaults. So one of the things you can choose is the software packages or profiles that you want to go with. I chose a graphical server. So this is a server install, but with a graphical GNOME environment. You could also choose to have a full workstation install, or you could choose a minimal install, or you could choose like a headless server install. If you are using a server, you're probably going to want to go with a headless install, not a graphical install. But if you are someone who just feels more comfortable with a GUI and doesn't want to access it remotely, this might be the way to go. I wouldn't judge you for doing that. Also, if you are going to run a workstation, this would be a great option for a workstation. You can add whatever software you need after the fact. Or if you wanted, you could just do the workstation install, and you're probably going to have more stuff installed by default. So there's that. Also, I should mention, this is not bug for bug compatible. That's not guaranteed. It is binary compatible. So anything that runs on Red Hat, anything that's compatible or certified with Red Hat Enterprise Linux should run the same on Rocky Linux. Same deal with Alma Linux. I went on and on about this a whole lot more in my video that I just recorded last night about Alma Linux. I kind of I talked at a little bit more length about that in that video. I've probably gone on a little bit too long in this video about this one. There are some slight differences. Anything that I said for Alma Linux basically holds true for Rocky Linux. Basically, there are a few slight differences. Everything like the core OS packages, kernel, everything else, all the default configurations and security updates, all that stuff, certifications should all be identical to Red Hat Enterprise Linux. The branding is changed. The build process might be slightly different. There are some extra repositories that are easier to access and have easier default access in Rocky Linux and Alma Linux, and there's no subscription or telemetry in Rocky Linux like you get with RHEL, and they may have been built with a different tool chain. There might be some proprietary bits of the build process that they didn't have access to. So they're building the same source. They're using Red Hat provided source RPMs, but the tools they build it with might be slightly different. So just kind of understand that, but it's basically the same thing. You'll have a really hard time finding differences between this and Red Hat, except for, the obvious things like branding and telemetry, right? So anyways, this is GNOME. This is GNOME on Wayland using the Mutter window manager, which is pretty much expected. We are using GDM for our display manager. I already have NeoFetch installed on here. I did that, and I changed the theme to the dark theme. It was the light theme before. So if you look here, appearance, it was like this, but to start looks terrible. So switched it to dark, right? One thing to point out. So one of the biggest difference between Red Hat Enterprise Linux, CentOS, even CentOS Stream. CentOS Stream is a little bit newer, but one of the biggest differences that I noticed off the top of my head is that, that I noticed when looking at it, when reviewing them, is the wallpapers. So the CentOS Stream has only like two different versions of the same wallpaper. So Alma Linux is the same deal. Red Hat, I'm gonna review that one after this. This one actually has a whole lot more wallpaper options than Alma Linux or CentOS Stream. So that doesn't mean you can get tons of wallpapers for free. It's not a big deal, but by default, we have a bunch of wallpapers here, and they're actually pretty nice. These are some pretty reasonably nice wallpapers. Basically, look at that. That's pretty nice, right? Look at that. That's a nice looking wallpaper. I like this one. This is actually pretty nice. Even though that's all superficial, and you can install those wallpapers on any distro, right? So anyways, that is the appearance of it. So what else do I want to show you? So I installed NeoFetch before recording this video. I just wanted to have it there just to kind of show you everything I have here. That's the system I'm running on. I'm using a GeForce GTX 1080. So by default, this is going to have the Nouveau NVIDIA drivers, which is default on most distros. However, in Red Hat, however, for if you want more performance, you're going to need the drivers from NVIDIA, not the Community Edition Nouveau drivers. So you are going to either want the proprietary drivers from NVIDIA or the open source drivers from NVIDIA. The open source drivers for NVIDIA require the next generation of card. Any card newer than a 10 series will be compatible with those, and that's what you should use these days. My card is too old for the open source NVIDIA drivers, and I would need the proprietary drivers to get maximum performance from this. So, and there are reasons you might want to install that, like if you're doing using it for CUDA or computation or anything like that, anything scientific, AI stuff, anything like that, that might be a reason you might want to install the better NVIDIA drivers. And you're probably not going to use this as a distro for gaming. You should use something more up-to-date like Arch or Fedora or Ubuntu or any number of other distros. Don't use this one for gaming. You could, but it's probably not the best for gaming because it's not really up-to-date. That said, yeah, if you want to install the right drivers, get the closed source proprietary drivers from NVIDIA. Those would be optimal. We'll show you a little bit more about that in just a little bit. So anyways, let's take a look at the default memory usage. So free-h, basically what we've seen in other and basically everything else. When you have a basic simple GNOME desktop, 1.3 gigs, right, being used, and you have 28 free, 31, or really it's 32. You're using like a 1.8 for buffering and caching, so that's available. So you have 29 available, even though 28 is free. So yeah, no swap space being used. We do have 15 gigs or 16 gigs of swap space available, but we're not using any of it right now. So next thing we should take a look at, let's take a look at the disk layout. So let's start with LSBLK. So you see here, this is my install disk. This is just a USB disk I installed from. This is my actual hard drive or SSD. Standard stuff for a Red Hat system. You got your, your boot EFI partition, your regular boot partition. You have this partition here with some LVM volumes on it. You have your root, your swap, and your home, all LVM, so you can resize them or do whatever stuff you want to do with them, which is all fine and great and everything. Kind of interesting how this was sliced up with LVM. I would have put root and home together, but it doesn't hurt to have them separate. I guess it could hurt to have them separate, but you can resize these. It's pretty flexible. It's LVM. LVM is pretty standard for Red Hat and also commonly used on other distros. Let's take a look at our usage -H, and you can see using 5.9 gigs for this installation on our root file system. You can see our other file systems are here. There's our EFI partition and so on and so forth. So let's clear that and look at our FS tab, cat, etc, FS tab. And you know what? Let me just make this bigger just so you can see the text. I could make it smaller, but yeah, anyways. Disks identified by UUID, which is a good idea, pretty standard stuff these days. You got your root file system, your boot, both using XFS and home XFS, so XFS on top of LVM, and you have this one not being LVM. There's EFI partition, VFAT, pretty standard. It has to be a VFAT file system for your UEFI to be able to read the stuff in your EFI partition, so pretty standard there. And you got your swap defined right here, so standard normal stuff, and basically identical to my CentOS stream and Alma Linux installs that I just did within this last couple days. So let's clear this out. And you might want to go check those videos out too. I should have those posted up around the same time as this one. Maybe a few days before, maybe a few days after. Anyways, I'm reviewing a ton of other distros, so you might want to check out some of those videos. I'm doing more interesting distros than this as well. Anyways, let's take a look at the kernel. So uname-a, this is the kernel you get with this, going to match the RHEL kernel. 6.12.0-55.12.1, and it's the build is EL10_0, x86-64. That's the architecture. That's the kernel we have, right? So let's take a look at cat etc issue, and there's not going to be anything too useful in there. And then we can say cat etc os release. This is standard cross distro file that will show you tons of useful info, like the name, the version, the ID, what it's like, distros it's similar to, the version ID, platform ID, etc., the pretty name, red quartz, all that sort of stuff, right? I guess that red quartz, that kind of matches, that's the theme of this wallpaper. I guess these look like quartz or crystals, and it's kind of reddish, but whatever. Red and purple and blue all blended together. Anyways, I guess that's kind of what they were thinking in terms of the code name and the aesthetic of this version of Rocky Linux. And I guess it makes sense. It's Rocky Linux, having to do with rocks or whatever, so they wanted to name it after a type of rock. I'm guessing that was the thinking there. Anyways, so yeah, that's etc os release, and we also have an etc Red Hat release file, which is pretty standard for Red Hat systems. I've been looking at this ever since like 2005 when I started administering these, but I've been using Red Hat way longer than that, since probably more like 2001 or 2000. But I'm not sure when they started using this. They'd probably been using that since the 90s. But if you take a look at this file, it's actually a link. So etc Red Hat release is a link to etc Rocky release. So they're the same file. You can cat them out, and it just tells you the distro. So there's your distro name and the version, right? And the code name for the version. So yeah, it's a Red Hat release is a link to Rocky Linux, just like on Alma or CentOS. It's a link to the equivalent file. So just an interesting thing to point out there. So let's clear this out. Whoops, clear, and let's take a quick look at the NVIDIA drivers. ls mod rep-i nvi. And we can see no NVIDIA drivers on here, but if we go grep for NOU, you can see the Nuvo driver. This is the community-based, this is the community open source driver, compatible with basically almost all cards, NVIDIA cards out there. The most compatible thing, which is one of the reasons, and it's all open source, which is one of the reasons why it is, the default on most Linux distros. Some will give you detect what you have and give you the appropriate proprietary drivers for better performance, like the newest Ubuntu did that for me. That was pretty nice. Anyways, so that's the NVIDIA drivers. Wi-Fi drivers are working great by default. I'm using a wired connection right now, but I have a wireless card too, and that is, even though I don't have it configured, it's seeing wireless networks in my area. So the fact that it can see the wireless networks, it's only showing one right now, but if I leave it, it'll detect more. But the fact that it can see wireless networks shows you that wireless is working and that the drivers are working fine. So didn't have to do anything special for that. Your mileage may vary if you have other less supported wireless cards. Some are like infamous for being pretty terrible. From the terminal, so networking, we're using Network Manager. I'm not sure if I went for a pure headless install, it may use systemd networkd or Network Manager. I have not confirmed that. Systemd networkd would be pretty standard for a server. Network Manager is better for like laptops and desktops, anything with a graphical environment, because you're oftentimes going to move them around from one network to another. Network Manager facilitates that a little bit better. So systemctl, status, Network Manager. There we go. Network Manager is active and running. So there you go. There's Network Manager. Now, obviously, since this is a Red Hat system, we're using SE Linux instead of AppArmor. So you can say get enforce, and you're going to see that it's enforcing. There you go, enforcing, right? So we also have a firewall. So we can check that sudo systemctl status firewall D. There you go. Firewall's active, up and running. And you could check that without sudo too. I've been running these exact same commands, and this kind of feels like deja vu or whatever. Basically, this is almost identical to CentOS and Alma Linux, and I just reviewed both of those videos last night and this morning. And I'm basically doing the same thing here. I'm probably going to take a look at RHEL next, which is going to be more repetitive. Then I'm going to do something more interesting. Going to be checking out Void Linux and some other more interesting distros that aren't all the same. But anyways, yeah, I might want to keep an eye out for those videos. I should be publishing them, some of them before this one and some of them after this one. A lot of great Linux review videos and tons of other tech content you don't want to miss out on. So make sure you're subscribed. But there's our firewall service up and running. We can check this sudo firewall -cmd -all list all, and there you go. There's some firewall info. Not going to go any deeper than that, just like I didn't go any deeper than that with the previous two distros I reviewed. Anyways, multimedia. So we do have Pipewire, which is pretty standard for basically all distros coming out these days. There's Pipewire. That's running. You can kind of confirm it's installed and running on the system. So what else do we want to cover? So we covered RAM on idle usage for initial install, Pipewire, multimedia support. So this is not going to come with all the proprietary codecs and everything. So, if you install a media player with Flatpak, it should work by default. Probably VLC is going to support practically any format or codec too. You could probably install that with the package manager, and it's going to work with DNF, the RPMs with DNF. It's probably going to work just fine. But if you install it or any other media player with Flatpak, it should include all the proprietary codecs too. So that's an easy way, probably the way to go. If you really need to, you can add an additional repo and probably install all of the multimedia support, but it's not provided directly by Rocky Linux just because it's not open source. So that's just how they do things. Some distros like Mint and Ubuntu make it really easy to get all that support. So anyways, There are extra steps here, so it's not the easiest thing with the default install if you want multimedia support. So the terminal, the file manager, the text editor, all standard normal stuff. You got GNOME terminal, the GNOME text editor that replaced gedit. The regular file manager, regular nice looking GNOME file manager with some nice folder icons there. Terrific stuff, all standard regular stuff. So no Office stuff and no extra stuff installed by default because we didn't choose the workstation install. This is just a graphical server install. So all that stuff is generally available. So the package manager used here, just like RHEL and every other RHEL-based distro, we're using the RPM format for packages, and we're using the DNF package manager, which has replaced the older yum package manager used on older Red Hat based systems. We also have Flatpak installed, so if you don't want to use RPMs and DNF, you can use Flatpak to install your packages. There's no Snap because that's an Ubuntu thing, but yeah, there you can install Snap if you want to, if you really want it. But Flatpak is here. Flatpak is being pushed by Red Hat, so obviously that would be that is what is on the system. They're kind of they're competing with Snap, with Ubuntu and Snap. So anyways, Flatpak is installed, but there are no remotes defined. So Flatpak list, nothing installed. And if we look at remotes, no remotes defined. So CentOS Stream had some remotes defined. You probably should have some remotes defined on Red Hat Enterprise Linux. Alma Linux also did not have any remotes defined, whereas this also doesn't. So Rocky and Alma by default don't have remotes defined. I don't know why that is. That's a really strange thing to do. I guess they just don't want to endorse any specific. They don't want to endorse FlatHub or any other. I guess endorsing FlatHub. I'm not sure if Red Hat is behind FlatHub or it's a Red Hat endorsed project or what the deal is with that. Maybe they don't want to endorse it for some crazy reason. I could see that being the case, but they don't have it configured here by default, which is kind of strange. And yeah, so Flatpak's there, but no remotes defined. So the other thing, you have a nice little GUI here. You have your GNOME web GUI, their store here. You can manage updates with this, see what's installed, or explore new packages here. That's all fine and great. And you can search for stuff. I'm not sure why GIMP wasn't coming up when you search for it, but okay, so let's talk about the release system. Basically how they do releases. So these releases should track RHEL exactly. So it's a point release, not a rolling release. And basically this should mirror RHEL exactly. So this version, Rocky 10 should match Red Hat Enterprise Linux 10 exactly. So those versions should match right up, and it should provide support for about 10 years. And I think it's like, it should be regular support for 5 years. And I think it's supposed to be security updates for an additional 5 years after that, for a total of 10 years. So you can keep running it relatively safely for 10 years. I believe that's how that's supposed to work. And they do like major and minor updates. Major updates, like when you go to Rocky Linux or RHEL 10, you're going to have big jumps like new package versions, stuff like that. New default packages, those only happen on major releases. For minor releases, you are not going to get that stuff. You're just going to get like bug fixes and security updates, stuff like that. So the focuses on stability and long-term support and having one stable system that doesn't change for a really long time. That's kind of the focus with this OS. But that's about it. That's everything I wanted to show you. Leave a comment down below letting me know which Red Hat-based distro you use, or if you don't like a Red Hat-based distro, what's your favorite Linux distro? What are you running today? What have you tried? Leave a comment down below. Also, might want to give me a thumbs up for this video, but also definitely hit that subscribe button. You don't want to miss out on our other Linux content, and it's not just Linux. We do a lot of tech content in general. Hardware, software, servers, coding, robots and Raspberry Pis, all that great stuff. Don't want to miss out. Make sure you're subscribed to this channel and hit the bell icon. But that's about it for today. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you guys on that next video.